Just starting over on ITV2, tonight's Jerry Springer Show. Here on HTV, it's the nightly news.
Revealed. Last words from the cockpit of doomed Concorde. After angry scenes, French fishermen's blockade is over. Goodbye, Princess, the final farewell for Sarah Payne. And Atherton announces plans to hang up his bat.
From ITN, the ITV Nightly News with Nicholas Owen.
Good evening. Details of the final terrifying moments of the Concorde flight that crashed in France have been revealed tonight. With the plane on fire, the pilot desperately tried to land at another airport. But as disaster loomed, he said simply, too late. The latest official report also confirms that a single burst tyre caused the crash, which killed 113 people. Experts say it could be 9 months before Concorde is allowed to fly again. ITN's Sue Saville has been looking at the findings.
The cockpit voice recording of the ill-fated Concorde flight reveals how quickly the catastrophic situation developed. Less than 2 minutes from the first warning of flames, then the attempts to keep control of the plane, to the crash. The black box recovered from the wreckage gives a chilling account of how the crew struggled to divert to safety. The transcript shows it was the control tower which told Concorde crew there was a problem, saying, "Concorde 04590, you have flames behind you." An unidentified voice says simply, "Right." But a few seconds later, the mechanic reports, breakdown engine 2. As fire and warning alarms can be heard on board, the control tower calmly says, "So, at your convenience, you have priority to land." But in the cockpit, the emergency is escalating. Frantic sounds of switches can be heard. The crew can't raise the landing gear. The co-pilot says the gear won't come up and then urgently calls the name of a nearby airport, Le Bourget, Le Bourget, Le Bourget. But the pilot simply says, too late. And the last clear words are the co-pilot again saying, negative, we're trying Le Bourget. Air expert Paul Beaver says the tapes show the crew did everything they possibly could.
But all the indications are that nobody can be blamed for this accident in terms of air traffic control or least of all the captain of the Concorde. He did exactly the right thing. By the time that he realised he had a real emergency, he'd gone past the decision point. He had to take off.
The final report on Concorde is not due for at least a year. This preliminary report recommends all Concordes remain grounded until the risk of another fatal tyre blowout can be eliminated. Sue Saville, ITN.
The blockade of French ports is finally over. French fishermen called off their action after their government backed down and agreed to compensate them for high fuel prices. Ferry companies have been struggling to clear the backlog. We have reports from both sides of the channel. First, Juliette Bremner reports on a day of tension and anger in Calais.
Held to ransom by a handful of determined fishermen, British holidaymakers trapped at the Channel Tunnel finally lost their patience.
Let us through. Please, we pay more in England for our fuel.
They found themselves stranded when the fishermen arrived unexpectedly and used their vans as a makeshift blockade. They'd successfully blocked off the last escape route from France. Chris Howard had waited all night with her family and could tolerate the delay no longer.
You let us go through! You're not holding us to ransom! We are on our holiday!
We don't want to know!
You take your fishing somewhere else! We're on our holiday!
When threats left the fishermen unmoved, some motorists tried brute force, unwilling to accept that an industrial dispute gave anyone the right to prevent them travelling home. Although the police were there, they refused to intervene, leaving the boss of Eurotunnel to try and calm frayed tempers.
Tell them to stop us doing what we want to do. That is against the law, sir. If you're taking aggression, first of all, you'll be arrested. There was aggression going on here when I arrived, sir.
Then, without warning, it was all over. The French government had caved in. They promised to cut the price of fuel, and the cars started moving. Tonight there are few delays. Most people can expect to leave within a couple of hours. But for the majority of holidaymakers caught up in the chaos of the last 2 days, there's little chance of compensation, and absolutely no possibility of an apology from the fishermen who caused their misery. As the flotilla of boats that have been blocking Calais celebrated their victory, the fishermen claimed their tactics were legitimate. But for passengers heading home, it was a further reminder of the power still wielded by workers in France. Juliet Bremner, ITN, Calais.
The first ferry into Dover from Calais in 2 days docked by late afternoon. The holidaymakers and truckers on board just glad to be back home. For some of the hauliers, it wasn't the first time they'd been caught up in a French port's blockade.
Last year I got caught twice. This year, thankfully enough, it cleared itself up a bit, like, you know, but it's getting beyond the joke now, isn't it? You know, they're just doing it for the sheer fun of it now half the time, like, you know.
It's thought lorry companies in total have lost £5 million in the dispute, but neither they nor the ferry operators hold out much hope of compensation.
They simply don't pay, it takes too long. We've been here many times before, and it's 2 or 3 times a year this sort of thing happens, so the bill really does add up, and it does affect the bottom line.
The freight business wants the government to act now to stop future blockades. Ministers are sympathetic.
I've spoken to the French government and indeed the Commission and made clear that holding Britain to ransom arising out of a social problem in France is totally unacceptable.
Ferry services in and out of Dover are now back to normal, but there is concern here that as the French fishermen won their battle with their government so decisively, that other groups with a grievance in France may decide to use the same tactic in the future. John Draper, ITN, Dover.
There's been a roller coaster accident at Blackpool Pleasure Beach tonight. At least 23 people have been hurt. 4 of them had to be cut free from a carriage trapped 25 feet above the ground. It happened on the roller coaster ride The Big One, the scene of this accident 6 years ago. Computer problems then caused carriages to stall just a week after the ride opened. And a few moments ago, Anthony Marsh of the Lancashire Ambulance Service spoke to ITN.
It's a little early to get a very clear picture, but certainly the understanding I have is that 2 carriages collided as they were coming into the area at which the public disembarked from the carriages, and possibly one of those carriages was stationary or was actually travelling at a very low speed when the second carriage collided with it.
The family of Sarah Payne said a tearful goodbye to their little princess today at her funeral. The murdered 8-year-old made her last journey in a horse-drawn glass